My dear students, students of class 11, first of all, I would like to introduce myself to all of you because this is my first online class for you. Dear students, I am Suhas Bhuimali and I shall take your English classes. The students who have passed out from our school are very much familiar as well as intimate to me. But the students who have newly been admitted to our school are not at all familiar to me. So today I have expressed my identity, especially for the newcomers or the new students. There are some other teachers who will also take your English classes. But today is the beginning of your online class on the subject English. So dear students, I must offer you a warm welcome from the core of my heart to my online class today. Dear students, today I shall read the very first poem from your textbook and analyze it in this audio clip. Before starting my lessons today, or before I start reading this poem and analyze it in this audio clip, I appeal to every one of you to listen to this audio clip till the very end, and after that to read the poem very carefully. I hope that you will not have any difficulty in understanding or comprehending the poem. The poem is composed upon Westminster Bridge, September 3rd, 1802. William Wordsworth. The title indicates that this poem has been composed by William Wordsworth from what he had observed from the Westminster Bridge on 3rd September 1802. Every one of you knows the very name Westminster Bridge. This is in the city of London and over the river the Thames. So this poem has been composed by William Wordsworth from what the poet had seen from the Westminster Bridge on 3rd September 1802. Characteristically, this poem is a sonnet. Now, this is a new term, I hope, for you. So, I must say a few words about this type of poem. What is sonnet? You must know that. Sonnet is a poem of 14 lines. The poem that consists 14 lines is called sonnet. Sonnet has a long history. This sonnet was first introduced by Dante and Petrarch when Renaissance came in the 17th century in Europe. Dante and Petrarch were the pioneers of this type of poem. And the sonnet, which was first introduced by Dante and Petrarch, had a particular structural sequence. Usually, the sonnets written by Dante and Petrarch consist of two stanzas. The first stanza consists of 8 lines and second stanza consists of 6 lines. The stanza consisting of 8 lines is called octave, and the stanza consisting of 6 lines is called sestet. Now the sonnets consisting of this type of 2 stanzas, octave and sestet, are all called after the name of Petrarch as Petrarchan sonnet. Now, though William Wordsworth was not a remarkable name in the field of sonnet, this sonnet is very much popular or very much remarkable in the history of English literature. Now come to William Wordsworth as a poet. William Wordsworth is not a famous name in the field of sonnet, but he is a famous name in the field of romantic poetry. The romantic poetry was first introduced by William Wordsworth. William Wordsworth is called the pioneer of romantic poetry. He was the introducer of romantic poetry or the romanticism, or he was the first poet who introduced romanticism, the concept of romanticism, to the English literature. In the year 1798, or in the late 18th century, in that particular year 1798, which was one of the most significant years in the world, in the history of English literature. In that particular year, William Wordsworth, in collaboration with Samuel Taylor Coleridge, remember this name also, Samuel Taylor Coleridge. In collaboration with Samuel Taylor Coleridge, William Wordsworth published a book of poems that brought revolutionary changes to the fields of poetry as well as to the history of English literature. The book Lyrical Ballads, the book was called The Lyrical Ballads, that was composed by William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge and published in the year 1798. And that publication had brought revolutionary changes to the field of poetry in respect of theme and content of the English poetry. All the poems that were included that were published in the book The Lyrical Ballads were new and novel in respect of theme and content. Primarily, in all this poem, it was found that the theme was on the nature. When English poetry was getting out of taste of the readers, or getting oblivious, William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge restored the taste of the English readers, or the readers of English poetry, by publishing this remarkable book of poems, the Lyrical Ballads. Now, in all the poems, it was found that the theme was absolutely new. In all the poems composed by William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge, the poet's love of nature was found. In all the poems, they introduced the nature as the main content of the poem. And obviously, their love of nature was expressed in all the poems. The readers of English poetry got back their taste in reading English poetry. So, William Wordsworth was called the pioneer of Romantic poetry. Now, in Romantic poetry, the main feature is that this is composed on the natural setting, or on the poet's love of nature. There are some other features of Romantic poetry. And most importantly, the features of Romantic poetry include the poet's imaginativeness. In Romantic poetry, you will find that the poets are very imaginative by nature. With the feat of imagination, the Romantic poets represent every commonplace matter as very much interesting and very much beautiful, obviously. Now, dear students, today I am reading this poem, Composed upon Westminster Bridge, September 3, 1802, by William Wordsworth. Though, according to structure, this is a sonnet, because this poem consists of two stanzas, octave and sestet. The first stanza is called octave, consisting of 8 lines, and the second stanza is called sestet, consisting of 6 lines. So this is obviously a Petrarchan sonnet, but in respect of theme, this is definitely a romantic poem. In this poem, you will find William Wordsworth's grim love for nature, or true love for nature. Now, this poem has a special background. I must say this also before I start reading this poem and analyzing it. William Wordsworth, most often accompanied by his sister Dorothy Wordsworth, would go to different places to enjoy the beautiful nature. Now, on that particular day, 3rd September 1802, William Wordsworth, as usual accompanied by his sister Dorothy Wordsworth, would set out for a particular destination, which was probably known as Dover, which was very much noted for its scenic beauty. And on 3rd September 1802, in the very early morning, they were crossing the Westminster Bridge. And when they were crossing the Westminster Bridge, they were stunned to see the view of the city of London from the Westminster Bridge. The city of London was their native city. So that was not at all new to them. But when the view of the city of London was caught on their views from Westminster Bridge in the early morning of September 3rd, 1802, they were moved, deeply moved. They thought that the city of London was an unknown place. The city of London, the very city of London, appeared to them absolutely new, absolutely an unknown place of nature. Dorothy Wordsworth was so moved by this charming view of the city of London that she expressed her feelings of the observation of that particular day in a journal. And William Wordsworth was inspired by his sister. And being inspired by his sister, William Wordsworth had composed this sonnet, composed upon Westminster Bridge, September 3rd, 1802. Now, dear students, discussion has been so long today, but still I haven't started reading the poem and analyzing it. Now, as the discussion has been so long, before I start reading the poem and analyzing it, today I shall just complete the first stanza of the poem, or the stanza which is called octave. Earth has not anything to show more fair. Dull would he be of soul who could pass by. When William Wordsworth saw the city of London from the Westminster Bridge in the early morning of September 3rd, 1802, he was moved. He was so moved to see the view of the city of London that he thought it the most beautiful, or the most beautiful place of the earth. The view of the city of London that was caught in the poet's observation in the very first morning of September 3rd, 1802, made him think that it was the fairest on earth. It was the most beautiful object on the earth. Dull would he be of soul who could pass by. The poet couldn't imagine that this sort of view of the city of London could be ignored by anyone else. He was not in a state to ignore it anyway. And at the same time, he thought that no one would be there to ignore such a charming view of the city of London. And if anybody could ignore it, as was thought by the poet, as was considered by the poet, he would be dull-minded. He would be dull of soul. That means he would be dull-minded, or he would be dull. He would be devoid of aesthetic sense. He had no sense at all, as was thought by the poet William Wordsworth. He had no sense at all to view or to sense the beauty or to feel the beauty. So, you can feel how emotional the poet turned after seeing the view of the city of London in the early morning. The poet thought that it was the most beautiful thing or most beautiful object he had ever seen so far. He thought it the most beautiful object on earth, and he also thought that this sort of view could not be ignored by anyone else. Now, in case anyone could ignore this particular view of the city of London, he is absolutely devoid of aesthetic sense, or he had no sense at all to sense or to feel the beauty of any object. A sight so touching in its majesty, the poet also thought that this sight is majestic sight. This is so touching sight, as was thought by William Wordsworth. The sight or the view of the city of London was majestic by nature, and the sight was so touching, the sight was so penetrating. The sight or the view of the city of London penetrated the poet's heart, touched the poet's heart. This city now doth like a garment wear. The city appeared to him as a new one, and also the city appeared to him as something newly dressed up. It appeared to him, it seemed to him that the city had newly been dressed the city had been personified by the poet here. The beauty of the morning, silent bear. Now the poet had classified the beauty of the city of London that he had viewed and observed, that he had viewed or observed on that particular date, on that particular moment. The poet had classified the beauty that he had viewed in the city of London of that particular moment, of that particular date, as silent bear. The silent and bare. There was an absolute silence when the poet viewed the city of London from Westminster Bridge on that particular moment of that particular date. And at the same time, he had also observed that there was bareness, absolute bareness or emptiness all around in the city of London. That was unthinkable, unimaginable. But the poet had observed these two unimaginable aspects in the city of London. Unimaginable, obviously unimaginable, because the city of London remains noisy, remains crowded throughout the day. But on that particular moment, the poet had observed, the poet had sensed that there was an absolute silence, there was an absolute bareness in the city of London. So the beauty that the poet had observed in the city of London was classified or was regarded by the poet as silent and bare. Ships, towers, domes, theatres, temples lie open unto the fields and to the sky, all bright and glittering in the smokeless air. The poet had observed some particular, some specific elements like ships on the river of Thames, towers, domes, theatres, temples, all these public places. Domes, theatres, temples, these are the public places. In front of these places, there are crowds at all times. But on that particular moment, when he viewed the city of London from the Westminster Bridge, he was totally surprised. He was surprised because all these places were then vacant, were then open, and the openness all around these places, even in the ships, was so acute, as was observed by the poet on that particular moment from the Westminster Bridge, was so acute that these places appeared to be open onto the fields and up to the sky. So there was openness, there was emptiness, bareness all around that was seen by the poet never before. So the poet was moved, the poet was absolutely surprised the way the city of London appeared to him on that particular moment was absolutely new to him. all bright and glittering in the smokeless air. There was an advantage in respect of weather. In the city of London, the sky, particularly in an early morning, remains foggy, remains crowded most often. But on that particular day, the weathery condition was superb. There was no fog at all. There was no cloud at all in the sky. And as it was an early morning, the day's activities were not at all started then. So the air was so clear. The sky was so clear of clouds, so clear of fogs, etc. So everything in the city of London was looking so bright, so glittery. Everything on that particular day, on that particular moment, everything in the city of London on that particular moment, on that particular day, was looking so bright, so glittering, so shiny, as the air was smokeless, as the air was not at all inclement, as usually remains in the city of London. So the poet was fortunate enough to view the city of London as a new one. Though the city of London was their native city, the city of London was very much familiar to him. That city appeared to him as new one on that particular moment and on that particular day. Dear students, I end this audio clip here, and here I have read and analyzed the first stanza of the poem, or the octave part of this sonnet composed upon Westminster Bridge, 3rd September 1802. Now, before finishing my audio clip today, I once again want to appeal to you. Please listen to this audio clip attentively till the very end, and after that read this part of the poem carefully for your better understanding. Okay, goodbye.